Hey there, Deluxe fans! Hope you're feeling particularly magical today. Disney's most recent animated film, Encanto, has given fans a lot to think about, especially when you begin digging deeper into the individual characters that made the film such a masterpiece. We learned a lot about each of the characters as the film progressed, and even more as they began to lose their powers. Something that we found really interesting after giving it some thought, however, was the order in which the members of the Madrigal family began to lose their gifts. More specifically, we found ourselves wondering why it was Luisa that lost her power first. While the rest of the family began to show signs of their powers beginning to fade or lose control, like when Camilo began shapeshifting randomly and against his will, for Luisa it was a bit different. She actually mentioned to her younger sister Mirabel that she was beginning to feel weak toward the beginning of Encanto, rather than during the back half of the movie, like the rest of her family. And if you noticed, the glow that emanates from each of the family members' bedroom doors began to flicker on Luisa's as soon as she admitted that her gift was fading. The creative minds behind Encanto never directly addressed why it was Luisa who began experiencing the miracle fading before anyone else. But as Disney fans, we know that the devil is in the details. Even the smallest portion of a Disney movie has meaning to it. It just might take a little extra digging to discover what that is. So today we are going to be talking about why we think that Luisa was the first member of the Madrigal family to begin losing her gift. It always seemed a bit odd to us that it was Luisa who began experiencing the loss of her powers first. You'd think that the first person to start losing their gift would be the person who got their gift first, which, if you aren't counting Abuela Alma, would have been either Julieta, Pepa, or Bruno. And if you follow the director of Encanto on Twitter, you may have seen that out of the triplets, Julieta was born first, with the order being Julieta, Pepa, and then Bruno. If that's the case, then it would be fair to assume that Julieta was the first in her family to receive her gift. So why wasn't she the first to start losing it? You could also presume that the last or most recent person to receive their gift would be the one who began to experience it fading. In that case, the first person effective would have been Antonio. But once again, that wasn't the case. It was Luisa. She was the first to experience the miracle fading when she began to feel weaker and weaker until her super strength was no longer there. At face value, it would appear as if there weren't any apparent pattern as to which family member was affected first. But we're Disney fans. We don't take things at face value. And in the words of Sheldon Cooper, I don't need sleep, I need answers. Thankfully, a fan theory that began to develop on Reddit may have given us just the insight we need to figure this out. The fan on Reddit points out that throughout the movie, every single one of the Madrigals needed to discover what their own personal value was, while also learning to value one another for more than just their gifts that made them so magical. So it would make sense that Luisa's powers began to fade first, considering how much her family and the villagers value her for her strength rather than for who she is as a person. That, paired with the self-doubt about how much she is worth to the family without her ability to help them, made her lose sight of what was important, which in her case was self-care and self-worth. Now, I like this theory because when you think about everything that we see Luisa have to put up with, it really adds up. I mean, nearly every time we saw Luisa in Encanto, she was doing something for someone else and always worrying about her next chore or task. Her family and the community around her had become reliant on her to do every simple task that needed to be done, simply because she had the strength to do it. As we mentioned a second ago, her physical gift made her the perfect person to have to perform task after task. And it should be pointed out that the rest of the Madrigal family certainly worked for the community around them, and they helped the people in town a ton, but none of them put in anywhere near as much work as Luisa did. On the short walk that we see Luisa have with her younger sister Mirabel, we got to see the perfect example of the town relying on her for everything. In the span of about 25 seconds, we saw someone tell her to gather up the donkeys that had escaped, someone asked her to fix their house because somehow it got tilted, and then she even makes a promise to reroute a river, and by herself. Even with modern day tools and a full team of workers, that's not something that you just do. It takes a ton of prep and planning, but the town doesn't want to or have to worry about all of that. They have Super Luisa to do everything for them. It only goes to show you that it wasn't only her family who expected Luisa to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders, but the actual villagers as well. There is also the chance that because of all that was being asked of her, while she watched her family not have to work as hard to please everyone, Luisa might have grown to resent her gift. The very thing that made her so special was also inadvertently making her life a living hell. The fact that she believed that her strength was the only thing that made her valuable to her family is not only really sad, but it's very telling of the way that Luisa viewed everything surrounding her gift. During the song Surface Pressure, Luisa let everything go for a brief second as she vented to her little sister about how she was feeling. In the song, she not only mentions that if she could get out from under all of the pressure, she might also be able to free room up for things like joy and relaxation. But in the very same song, she said the line, "I'm pretty sure I'm worthless if I can't be of service." Despite desperately needing a break for herself, Luisa never takes one or even asks for a little bit of time to relax. This could very well have caused her to view her super strength as a burden instead of the gift that the rest of her family, as well as the town, see it to be. As the self-doubt that Luisa was feeling began to build and build inside of her, that might have caused her powers to be affected as well, which might have made it easier for her to lose her grasp on her gift when the candle began to dim and the miracle began to fade. This would make sense when you consider the fact that all of the other members of the Madrigal family began to experience losing their powers at around the same time. Not Luisa though. She tells Mirabel that she began feeling weaker at the same time that Mirabel saw the foundation of Casita begin to crack, and it would seem like she was the only other family member, aside from Mirabel, to be affected at that time. That's likely because of the self-doubt that was already growing inside of her, and possibly even the resentment she might have been feeling over her gift, not to mention the fact that she was the first member of the family to be absolutely exploited for her gift. And remember, Abuela started them working at a young age, hence why she let Antonio know, literally the day after he got his gift, that she was going to find some way to put him to use. This means that Luisa was probably working like a dog almost immediately after receiving her super strength around the age of 5. That is crazy. On the other side of things, I'm sure that Abuela Alma's complete lack of respect for Luisa did more than its fair share in contributing to Luisa feeling worthless and losing her gift faster than the rest of her family. From the very beginning of the movie, we get a glimpse at how Alma saw her granddaughter. To her, Luisa was no more than a machine or a tool to be used for the family, as well as the town's leisure, despite how it affected Luisa. There is no arguing that Luisa had the highest expectations placed on her, especially when it came to working and helping out the town compared to the rest of her family. We saw throughout the film that Luisa was basically expected to work non-stop, specifically because of her physical gift. While the rest of the Madrigals get chances to socialize and live their own lives to a certain extent, Luisa is never given that opportunity. She was constantly being called to do a task, even at Antonio's ceremony and the party that followed. Luisa is constantly being ordered around to carry things and go get things. It was all grunt work, and that's basically how they treat Luisa. Only the sad thing is, it's her family, which makes it even more disrespectful. The amount of pressure that was placed on Luisa by Alma could only have led Luisa down a path of self-destruction. A human being can only take so much before they start feeling as if they aren't good enough, and Luisa herself said that she would feel worthless if she was unable to help her family. That sense of inadequacy was pushed on her by Abuela, all while she was surely becoming exhausted from all of the work and chores she had to do around the village. And to make the pressure even more intense, Luisa was the first and only family member to really be treated this way. Think about it. None of the other members of the Madrigal family are forced to work all day, every day. I mean, we mentioned before that all of the other Madrigals get to enjoy their own personal lives to an extent and even socialize with people in town. Luisa didn't get those pleasures. She was the first family member that Abuela Alma began to clearly care more about the gift than the person behind the gift. Alma paid no mind to Luisa's mental state and just assumed that because she was physically strong, that she would be capable to handle the weight of the world. This was the first sign that the gifts and the miracle itself were potentially causing a gap in the family and how they all perceive one another. The only other member of Luisa's family that might have gone through something similar might have been her mother, Julieta, but even that isn't likely. I mean, it's probably safe to assume that with the ability to heal people with her cooking, Julieta would hold a lot of responsibility throughout the village. She was essentially the hospital to the entire population of their little town. But notice we use the word little. If you really think about it, with the size of the town and the number of villagers we see in Encanto, it's safe to say that it's a rather small village, right? Well, when Julieta was younger and first received her gift, the village was likely even smaller, and the number of wounds that would have needed to be mended wouldn't really be too much. Certainly not enough to overwhelm her. And then when you consider the fact that Julieta was likely able to cook the healing food in large batches without the healing properties fading, odds are that she still managed to have some time for herself. I mean, she was clearly able to start and raise a family, and that requires some social time, if we are keeping this PG. Luisa felt pressure from her family in ways that none of the other Madrigals did, and this led her to live a life with low self-esteem and an overall low sense of self-worth. That, paired with the crippling high expectations that not only her family, but the villagers also placed on her, it's no wonder she began to crack, just like Casita's foundation, and her gift was the first to fade away. Disney's Encanto showed us what it was like living within a family where each member plays a distinct role based on the power granted to them by the miracle that blessed them generations ago. While each member of the Madrigal family had their own demons to face and crosses to bear, none of them were treated quite the way that Luisa was, and that likely played a major role in her losing her gift before anyone else. But what do you guys think? Do you think Luisa lost her gift because of her low sense of self-worth? Or was it something else? Be sure to let us know in the comments section below. As for now, that's all Disney fans. Let us know what video you'd like to see next in the comments, and like and subscribe for more magically packed videos.